Hi guys, and welcome back to World of Tanks, or should I say Ohio, which is, well, as far as I'm aware, Japanese for hello. And we're looking at the Type 3 Chi, which is one of the very limited choices you have if you want a Japanese crew trainer. In fact, there are only two that are readily available, and only three in total, the Kaiju being the third, with the STA-2 in there as well. Now, the Chi and the STA-2, like I say, are readily available in the tech tree. And I feel that, personally, Japan and China, but Japan especially, are a very neglected tank line. I know we had the super heavies for the Japanese joiners, but there really isn't much to choose from in here, and especially with premiums, you've, like I say, STA-2, Chi, and the Kaiju occasionally. At least with the Chinese, they have the Type 64, they have the 112, they have the T-34-3, all readily available. They also have the Type 59, and they have the Legion 59. So I just feel that Japan is very, very neglected when it comes to regular tanks and premium tanks. Now, the regular tanks, it could be down to the fact that they didn't produce that many different ones. But I just think it needs a bit of love and care. Now, I don't have a very good crew for my Japanese tanks. Basically because there aren't really that many. I've got the STA-1, and that's the crew that's in here, and they're not very good because I ended up selling the STA-1 because the grind is horrible. The STA-1 grind is vile. The Type 64, no, whichever one is after the STA-2, Type 69 possibly, I can't quite remember. But yeah, that one is awful as well. That's a horrible grind. But Type 61, yeah, they don't use any of the same components, so they are horrible grinds for the tier 8 and 9. Anyway, we're here to talk about this one, tier 5 premium. It does get preferential matchmaking, so it won't see higher than tier 6, and its bonuses are 50% silver and 45% XP. And when you first hear the armor stats, it actually sounds alright, but when you look at the tank, it is very, very flat. But let's have a look at the gun first, and then we'll start looking at the armor and the modules. Well, it's a 7.5 centimeter or 75mm tank gun. It's on a lot of the mid-tier Japanese tanks. 12 rounds a minute, 124 penetration, 125 damage, 155 on your premium rounds, which is quite low, I feel. In fact, no, there's not even how I feel about that. It is fairly low, yeah, it's quite a low premium round. And then 38, 175 on your HE. You get a 2.3 second aiming time, which is around average for the tier, and 0.37 accuracy, which is not bad. It kind of reminds me of the M1A1 gun from the M4 Sherman, but the accuracy is better on this. But the Sherman's got a better rate of fire at about 14.3-ish. It's just over 14. Slightly higher penetration at 128, but less damage at 115. So it does pretty much even out to be around the same as a Sherman with an M1A1. However, I am going to just quickly look, because there was something else that was bugging me about it. 177, that was it. So yeah, it is quite low penetration on your premium ammunition, but they're not APCR or anything like that. They are actually another armor piercing round. You get 38 degrees of hull traverse and 30 degrees of turret traverse. Now, the turret traverse does feel a little slow. The hull traverse is, well, it's about on par with the American mediums, so, you know, it's not too bad. Could be better, could be worse. Supplies-wise, 82 silver per armor piercing for your standard armor piercing, should I say. 2,800 for your premium armor piercing rounds, and 60 for your high explosive. Now, APCR rounds fly quicker through the air, but they also lose penetration quicker over distance, so these do have that slight advantage over the APCR with the penetration, but not so much with the actual velocity. Equipment wise, I've gone for vents, gun lane drive, and a gun rammer, which again is pretty boring, pretty standard. You could put optics on instead of vents, which it probably would benefit from because this is a true support tank. It can move fairly quickly around the flank, but its armor is garbage, so it is pretty much a supporting tank. Let's have a look at the actual modules. Well, your view range is 350 meters, which is quite poor for the tier. I think the Sherman's 370, and yeah, view range isn't brilliant. Signal range is pretty poor as well at 400 meters. In fact, yeah, that is bad. Stationary concealment is 0.24, which isn't too savage, and moving is 0.18, which again isn't too bad. 480 hit points, which again is about average for the tier. Now, I don't particularly like this tank. I'm not saying it's a bad tank. There's just something about it. It just doesn't click for me, and I'm not keen on it, so I'll get that away right off the bat. But I will try and show you it to the best of my ability. Now, it gets a 240 horsepower engine, which does feel underpowered, especially when you come across any incline. And you get a power to weight ratio of 11.32, which again is pretty poor, and it's kind of like heavy tank sort of power to weight ratio. And in fact, a lot of the heavy tanks have got better than that, but we'll have a look at the terrain resistances and see if it makes any more sense there. Top forward speed of 38.8 kilometers an hour, so again, it's not the fastest. It can move around the battlefield, but it's not as quick as some of the other mediums, so you know, it's not as good at flanking as some of the others. And in a way, it does kind of remind me of the Sherman a lot, in a lot of respects. Reverse speed is 16 kilometers an hour with a 15% chance of fire, so that is slightly lower than a lot of the American ones, but you do have engine components in the front of your tank behind your lower glacis, and your frontal armour, like I say, is pretty crap. The gun itself, the engine block is it's the back of the tank. From the rear of the turret to the back of the tank is engine block. Now the gun, well, we've already covered aiming time, etc. You have a decent elevation of plus 20 degrees, but you have quite a poor gun depression of 6.5 degrees, so it's not going to win out on a ridgeline over the Shermans. You can use that to your advantage, and you're going to have to as much as possible, but your best defense in this is just not being seen, going after the stuff that's already occupied. You do have fairly good terrain resistances though, at 0.8, 1 and 1.9, so that does make up somewhat for your poor terrain resistance, for your poor power to weight ratio, but not when you're going uphill, unfortunately. Rather large turret, and you will notice it is a very large commander's hatch on top of there as well. The radio is in the front left hand side of the hull, or the right as we're looking at it, on that shoulder piece there, or the whole shoulder, I would call that. Ammunition block, you've got one in the back of the turret, so it is, from the side, the very back of the turret, and you've got one in the right hand side of the tank that takes up most of the space in that, I would call it the hull shoulder, so it's the bit that sticks out just above the track towards the front of the turret. In fact, it's more or less the front half of the hull or thereabouts is ammo rack. Just don't aim for where that view slot is, aim just behind it. Crew members, you've got 5 crammed into here. You've got the driver and the radio operator down in the front of the hull, commander under his cupola, and then gunner and loader sat up there in the turret alongside him. Now, armour-wise, well, your basic figures, 50 on the front of the hull and 75 on the front of the turret. 25 on the side of the hull, you're not going to be side scraping in this. 50 on the side of the turret, 50 on the rear of the turret, and a paltry 20 on the back of the hull. Yeah, it's not sounding good, is it, really? But then again, like I say, I'm not keen on this tank. Other people might really like it. It does remind me of the Sherman in a lot of respects, but it does feel solely a support tank. You're not going to be brawling in it. You're not going to be on the front line. You are going to be at the medium range, out of spotting distance, hopefully putting shots in on already spotted enemies. Now, 1 to 20, well, it's the upper side of the actual hull, which is quite disappointing because that was low enough as it is. The top of the turret and the commander's hatch, not the engine deck, which is a pleasant surprise, but the rear of the hull. The tracks fall into that and will act as spaced armour, although there is that gap in them as well. And also, this is quite hard for me to see with the new colours. They've tried to make it easy, but they haven't. The bit with the angled bit, the turret the hull shoulder, all fingers and thumbs in my mouth today, if that makes sense, with the viewport in, is actually quite thin. 1 to 20 is very bad, and it's the same on the other side as well. So yeah, 60mm gun will overmatch that, even at a good angle. 21 to 30, well, that's the rest of the side of the hull, so the lower part of the side of the hull. on both sides, and I think that's it for that. 31 to 50, it's your flatter part of your lower glacis, and I don't know, I'm going to call it the driver's plate for purposes of this video. The bit with the driver's hatch and the flatter bit, that is quite thin, that falls into the 31 to 50. I'm assuming it's the 50mm mark. The side of the turret falls into that, as does the rear, and obviously the other side, because they were marked as, I think, was it 50? Now, 71 to 90. That's the lower part of your commander's hatch, so that is one of the thicker parts on it, but it's not stopped me getting penned through there every time it gets hit. Also, the front of the turret falls into that, and it looks like part of the armour behind the gun mantle, if you can call it a gun mantle, more of a gun mounting. Now, 91 to 120, we do have a very thin strip just around the gun mantle, and then 121 to 160, again, just around the gun mantle, so it is very thick there. However, if you are aiming at one of these, just aim it anywhere on the front of the turret. Chances are you're going to pen it, just don't aim too close to the gun. But to be honest, if you've got the hull, just go for the front of the hull. It is rather weak. Yeah, it is a very weak hull on this. If they are hull down and you can only hit the turret and you are struggling to actually pen the turret, then you want to be going for the commander's hatch and the very top part of it, which is very, very thin, as you can see there. When I can find the right colour code. In fact, it doesn't even seem to show it. So, but yeah, you want to go for the top of the commander's hatch. If you can't get to the hull, or even just the turret cheeks, you might be able to pen there, possibly. But the flatter part on the front of the turret is the best part, because it is just so flat. And I think that's about it. Oh no, sorry, crew skills. Well, like I said, I've not got a very good crew in here at the moment. You definitely want 6th sense, you definitely want camouflage. Maybe off-road driving to improve the already good terrain resistances would be beneficial, possibly. And anything that can improve your view range. So you want situational awareness. You want to make it so that you can outspot your enemies as much as possible in this. Because it is, like I say, very weak when you go in sort of one-on-one with stuff. It's very difficult to bounce shots, and you will get the odd lucky bounce, but you really do not want to be relying on your armour. And you are going to be in that supporting role. You will be able, like I say, you will be able to move around the battlefield fairly quickly, but you are going to have to allow yourself that little bit extra time. But I would say for this, you are going to be wanting things like situational awareness, camouflage, maybe even stuff like green thumb, muffled shot, smooth driving, no, silent driving, that sort of thing, maybe, to try and just limit how detectable you are as much as possible, because not getting seen in this is your best line of defense, in my opinion. And like I said before, that's not to say it's a bad tank, it just doesn't click with me. You might look at this and think, yeah, that could be the tank for me for my crew training. But I think that's about enough of it in the garage. We've covered armour, guns and everything else, so let's get into the replays and see how it actually handles. Now this first bit is, well, it's not a full match as you can see, and it's tier 5, it's on port, and it's a standard battle, but this is just kind of an average match for me in this thing. For those of you that have sort of skipped the replays, for me to reiterate, I'm not a big fan of this tank. I'm not saying it's a bad tank, it does have its good features, I'm just not a fan of it. I don't know what it is, just not a fan. And I feel that it is definitely a supporting tank, and for working the flanks, out, a bit of range, that sort of thing, trying to stay out the way. You can use ridges a little bit, but and it does have some good features. The gun is not bad. Like I say, it reminds me a lot of the M1A1 from the Sherman. But this, I don't know, this just seems to be a sort of average game for me in it. And it also shows what happens if you do get a bit too far forward in this thing, because the armour, well, it just doesn't feel designed to take a hit. You can bounce the odd shot. I mean, it does have preferential matchmaking, so you will see tier 3s occasionally, and they are more than likely to bounce off your turret and your hull, especially at range. Some of the tier 4s might as well at range, but anything, same tier or above, you just don't want to take a hit. So here we are for the first proper replay. I've done the best I can in it, so it'll give you an idea of what it's like, and you'll see what I mean. It kind of does remind me of the Sherman a little bit in some ways. Mostly just sort of the way that it plays. I mean, I don't know. I feel the Sherman is a bit of a supporting tank and quite a decent flanking tank. You know, it's fairly nippy when it's fully upgraded, and it really can work ridgelines very, very well. This can't work the ridgelines as well because, like I said in the garage, it's only got 6.5 degrees of gun depression, which is a bit disappointing for a Japanese vehicle. They have a bit of a reputation for having sort of fairly good gun depression, and that is true on, you know, some of them, but just not this one, unfortunately. But the gun's not bad, like I say, 12 rounds a minute, fairly decent accuracy, 125 pen, which is a little low, I've got to admit. It's a bit lower than the M1A1, but 125 average damage instead of 115. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. Now, there's not many people come out on this flank, but this is the sort of way that I feel that this should be used. Like I said, I do feel it's a support tank, and I feel it's slightly limited in that role as well. You can move on the flanks fairly quickly, but it's not got a great power to weight ratio. 38 km/h top speed. Again, just, you know, a bit of a recap. But if you allow yourself a bit of time, you know, you can get around the battlefield and work those flanks and, you know, provide that support. The accuracy's there. See, I took a hit from the KV-1. I am, how far away? Oh, he's parked in front of me now. Let's have a look. 250 metres, so he's got, what, about 112 pen, 70 odd on the front of the turret on here, 75, so that could have been a 50-50. Well, actually, no, it wouldn't have been. That would have just punched straight through. But I need to be backing off. I don't want to be going forwards. I tried to move forwards a little bit to sort of give the impression that I might be coming up and over, and then I've started backing off, and yeah, I'm going to tell people that I'm falling back. Not that I think anyone's particularly listening, but now it is time to sort of hightail out of there. But like I say, the terrain resistances are quite good, so on, you know, fairly level terrain you can get up to speed fairly quickly and you can maintain it. It's just you hit an incline and you'll notice your speed will drop fairly sharply, and if it's a, you know, any sizable hill, you can struggle getting up it a bit at any you know, any sort of speed. But I've got to pull back. Hopefully I'm not going to take any shells in the back as I'm running away. Well, not running away, tactical retreat. Let's get it right. But my plan is to get here. There's these bushes and there's a rise, and if that Marder is going to be AFK or AFP, however you want to pronounce it, well, I'm going to use him to my advantage. And they will see him. They will probably be distracted shooting at him, and I will hopefully be able to get a couple of shots off. And I'm not sure what his view range is, but it's not brilliant on this. So I would say skill wise, you probably want situational awareness fairly early on it, and maybe even drop the vents for coated optics, because I think outspotting excuse me, I think outspotting your enemy is a massive advantage in this, with the armour being quite poor. I mean, physical thickness is not bad, it's just that it's quite flat, unfortunately, and your side armour is terrible. Oh, there we go, that was a big hit from something. I think it was a Stug 3, if it possibly was, but that's what finished me off, unfortunately. Just pulled back, but I just had no support down there at all, so I just did what I could, and unfortunately it was a defeat. But I came out with that with just over 1,000 damage and ended up in second place. And that's a fairly average game for me in the Chinukai. It is what it is, unfortunately. Like I say, not my favourite tank. I'm not particularly good in it. I kind of know what I've got to do in it. you know, because I don't like it, I almost can't be bothered and end up just being a bit too aggressive. And when you do get up front a little bit in this, you are going to suffer for it, unfortunately. Anyway, here we are for the second one. It's another tier 5 match with the preferential matchmaking on this. More often than not, it's a tier 5 match. I find it's quite generous on the matchmaking with this. I do get into tier 6 matches, but not very often, and when I do, there's not normally many tier 6s. It's one of those where there's maybe 3 or 4 on each team. So I have found, personally, the matchmaking to be quite generous with this. I don't know if you guys have felt the same with certain premium tanks. The matchmaking just seems to be harsh on them. So it's, you know, even though they might have preferential matchmaking, more often than not, you're not top tier, or, you know, like when they don't have preferential matchmaking, you just seem to be bottom tier more often than not in them. I've got the odd premium like that. I can't think which ones it is. In Gorinich, actually. More often than not, I'm in tier 9 matches in that. But this one, it's not too bad. Now, it is an encounter, but I'm going round the back way to try and help out and provide a bit of support for these guys that are going around here in case they run into anybody, and also because I can go up and over the hill in the middle, and I'll be above the cap, so fingers crossed, might be able to maybe do a bit of spotting and provide some support from up there as well. See, there we go, just slowing right down going up here. Starting to speed up a bit now, it's levelling out a bit more. We've got a heavy down in the valley on the left. And we've also got some guys in the cap circle. Now there's a medium just over on my right, and I'm quite surprised he hasn't moved forward a bit to try and spot whatever's in the cap circle. But he could be taking shots from across the valley. On the other side there's a tank destroyer. If he's spotted, no, he's not taking any damage. Possibly just being cautious. Somebody's just been taken out. There's a Panzer 3-4. Now I'm going to go down, and I am going to try and spot whatever's in the cap. And see if I can do a bit of damage to them. There we go. There's a Blitzen down there. Put one through him. Just can't quite get the gun down. And that's sort of minus 6.5. Now I took a hit from something. Didn't quite see what it was. But like I said before, the side armor on this is terrible. Now I've just taken a hit from something else across the valley. And something else, an M4 in his Killman gunner. Now that, possibly the M1A1 gun. Yeah, I would have said it was. That's got 120 something millipen, and he's quite far away, but like I say, the armour on this, you know, you can get hull down to try and give yourself a bit of an advantage and use your stronger turret front, but you really do not want to rely on the armour on this. And it's, if you're familiar with the Japanese tanks and you've been through them, it does play very, very similar to the Tech Tree Tier 5, the Tier 6 as well. You know, it's that sort of style, so it is that support tank style. You know, what I'm doing against this Panzer 4H, that's how you want to be playing this tank. I'm outside of his view range, somebody else is spotting him for me, and I'm putting the shots in. But I should have moved. The M4 was tracking my tracer fire, and that was my own fault. I really should have moved instead of just sitting there pumping shot after shot out. That M4 driver was definitely on the ball. Anyway, that one again was unfortunately defeat. 1,125 damage done, 35,000 silver. So if you're good in the Japanese tanks, you could actually get this to perform quite well. I can't, but at least you know what you're getting in for now. Kind of similar style to the M4 in my opinion, and like I say, the Tech Tree Japanese tanks. But there you go. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's informed you about the Chinukai a little bit if you're looking for a Japanese crew trainer. I'll try and get the STA2 done in the next few days. So until then, take care out there, and I'll catch you next time. See you later, and have a good weekend as well.